Hi everyone again, I'm Charlotte Lewis. I'm a clinical lecturer in paediatrics at the School of Dentistry. And today I'm going to present to you my focus group study that I completed as part of my PG CAP. I will discuss how focus group discussions were used to understand how students perceived a recent case report assessment, and then how using the findings from the focus group, as staff, we have reflected and revised our current method of assessment for future cohorts. So a bit of background at first. So all fifth year dental students are set the assessment of completing a clinical case report for a paediatric patient. And this allows the assessment of two key elements that cannot be assessed using other formats, such as a single best answer question. And this is the application of evidence-based practice and the demonstration of reflective practice. So these two key elements are important because they align with the learning outcomes required for registration, which are defined by our professional regulator, the General Dental Council. So this study came about for a couple of reasons. Firstly, in 2019, in order to increase the clinical experience for our students, a change was made into the way that they were allocated their paediatric patients. However, this did make the completion of a longitudinal case report more difficult. And then in 2020, COVID-19 happened. This interrupted our clinical teaching and reduced our face-to-face contact with patients. So for this year, a simulated patient was used for the case report, and this was in order to standardise the assessment for the whole year group. There were three main aims of this study: to evaluate how useful the assessment was at consolidating prior knowledge, to assess the understanding of how the assessment might support future practice, and to address the impact of using a simulated patient. So onto the method. Ethical approval was sought from the university via the University Ethics Board, and the required participant information leaflets and the student consent forms were completed. The study design was a semi-structured focus group, which was conducted virtually using Microsoft Teams. All fifth year BDS students were eligible to opt in, and out of that, there were a total of 10 participants available at the time of the focus group, and this formed two focus groups of 5 students each. Of the students who did volunteer, though, had a representative demographic of the final year students. Data collection consisted of secure video and audio recordings, which were reviewed to produce an anonymised verbatim transcript. And then thematic content analysis was carried out on the data to define the main themes. So why did I choose to use focus groups? Well, they're interactive in nature, which allows for engagement with and between the participants. This enables probing questions to be used, which can lead to further expansion on the topic of discussion, and it draws out deeper responses from the participants. Using focus groups has allowed me to gauge the participants' facial expressions and reactions to the discussion topics, and then this gave me a deeper understanding of the thoughts and feelings relating to their opinions, and not just their opinions written down in black and white. So the focus group study came out with 4 main themes that were identified, and these were reflective practice, the use of evidence-based practice, critical thinking, and a lack of understanding of the task. So from the focus group discussions, it was clear there was a wide range of thoughts and opinions from the participants regarding reflective practice, but generally they fell into 2 schools of thought. There were those students who displayed an understanding as to why they'd been asked to provide written reflections as part of the case report. And then on the other hand, there were participants who just described it as a tick box exercise. This perhaps identifies the fixed and growth mindsets of different students, and those with more of a growth mindset embrace the challenge more. An interesting finding was how difficult all the participants felt it was to reflect. The majority of participants said that they thought it was harder to reflect due to the lack of face-to-face patient contact in the months before completing the case report. With regards to evidence-based practice, the participants showed a vague awareness, but on probing around the subject, they displayed little understanding as to how to actually apply this to their written work or their clinical decision-making. Some participants showed an understanding, but then they failed to expand on the role of evidence-based practice and how this will impact their future practice. Comments made by the participants clearly identified that independently they wouldn't consider the use of evidence-based practice. And perhaps a reason for this could be that when I questioned them around the topic, the participants expressed that they felt under-equipped in the research skills and knowledge to understand how and where to incorporate evidence-based practice into their work. So critical thinking, it was felt that the case report did enhance critical thinking. The participants felt that the task was challenging and that it did consolidate their prior knowledge and their prior learning. They felt that completing the case report required them to draw on several skills and made them think more deeply regarding the management of their patients. So the task did activate the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy. The participants made some comments and opinions which demonstrated that there was a slight lack of understanding of the task. Some participants didn't really understand why they were being set the task, and approximately half of the participants felt that the written task had just been given to them because in order to obtain a degree from the university, you needed to submit some form of written work in some format. And then they didn't clearly understand what skills they could take from the assessment and use and implement during their future practice. So just to summarise my key findings, all students did find the task useful, which was good. However, it was clear some students placed a higher value on completion of the task than others, showing an appreciation and a deeper understanding of the reasoning behind the task. Some students did not clearly display an understanding as to why the reflective element and the evidence-based practice elements and how they would contribute to their future practice. The focus group highlighted that there were gaps in student knowledge and understanding, and the use of a simulated patient was successful, though all participants like this because they felt it was a fair level playing field to base the case report on. So as staff, it's also important that we apply reflection to our teaching practices and reflecting on the findings of the focus group. Going forward, we plan to support future cohorts by introducing them to reflective cycles, and this will support both their professional and their personal development. The lack of understanding of the task of how and when to apply the evidence-based practice supports the importance of having the case report as part of the undergraduate curriculum. And then with the recent introduction of the new curriculum in the School of Dentistry, there's going to be more of a focus introduced on the critical appraisal into the undergraduate education. So some take-home messages. In summary, I hope this has increased your awareness of how focus groups can be used to gain more detailed feedback and evaluation from your students. Conducting focus groups has made us aware of student understanding and how students potentially interpret tasks that we set them. Our practice has been reformed to ensure that students feel supported when they undertake tasks. And although this was a small study, it was the first attempt at gaining some evaluative feedback from our students on this specific assessment. So that was well received as well by the students. They liked the idea of that. And thank you very much for listening. Can I take any questions?
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Any questions, everyone? Excuse me.
Charlotte, I've got a question. It's Denise Priest. Thank you very much for that, by the way. It's really, really helpful. I've used Evalsys in the past, and I am really struggling with, one, it's anonymised, and when I've monitored Evalsys, the first 15%, 20% are always the disgruntled students. So how much do you trust Evalsys when you're using it for improving your work? What's your view on Evalsys so far?
That's a really good question. I've not actually am very familiar with that system. It's because I'm not in charge of a component or a module or anything. In the School of Dentistry, I teach on the clinic side, so I'm not too familiar with that. But yeah, I think the advantage of maybe using the EVASys system, because sometimes you will get that anonymized feedback, and the students, when they know it's anonymized, feel like they can say, there's the advantage it's anonymized, so they can say what they want to say without you identifying that it's them. But also sometimes it's a bit impersonal, so they might just feel that they can rant at you, whereas gaining feedback either from your module as you go along, asking maybe just a bit of face-to-face feedback, sometimes that's more well received, and perhaps you don't feel as disgruntled if they feel they've been listened to further along. So I know focus groups themselves are quite time consuming, but maybe what part of the PG Cap, we said, some people said, oh, I just leave a post-it note at the end of the lecture theatre or the end of the seminar room, and if anyone's got anything they want to write down, they just write it down and stick it like on a sheet or a whiteboard on the way out. So they just feel like they're listened to a bit further along. So maybe different methods of feedback, I think, are good for gaining that balance on your module or component.
Thank you.
Okay, Lucy's got a question.
Hi, thank you. That was really interesting, and I'm sorry, I might not have been concentrating. Did you, when you how easy at the beginning, when you were saying how you set the groups up, how easy did you find it to get the students to take part? Were they keen to do the focus groups, or were they a bit sort of, oh, that's one more thing on my time?
Well, our students were quite keen,
Right.
and I don't know whether or not it was because they were just coming back to clinical teaching then, so their timetables weren't bumper chock-a-blocker. So I think if I'd have asked them this term for the 5th year students, with their lead up to finals, they're finishing off treating all their patients, I think I probably would have got less of a response. But right. I think because everything, it's quite novel moving to teams, doing them virtually, so I feel like I got quite a good response. So I think probably timing of when to target your cohort would be key. And the other thing as well is as a little, we gave them a little certificate to say that they participated in my postgraduate research. So students often quite like that, because they could put that in their portfolio going forward to say that they'd undertaken and helped with that. So I don't know how, if you were just gaining feedback for your module, whether you can't really say that they've helped with that.
I think you're probably right. I think it's probably often, I find that in the academic year, timing is everything, isn't it? And actually you have like very few windows where you can get certain jobs done, because it's all about, they've been doing it long enough, they're not doing assessments, they don't. So
I'd say that it was really easy to organise using Microsoft Teams though, because the students are quite available. Some people had it on their iPad, some people had it on their phone. The students were saying to me, "Oh, it's okay if I said I had to say no for this because it's research based, so you've got to be in a room sort of you can't be doing it on the train because it is a focus group." But they were sort of saying, "Oh, can I do it while I'm walking home?" And I did have to put a stop to that, but it was because it was confidential. But whether or not, if you're just gaining feedback from your students, that you could do it as and when suited them.
Thanks.
Okay, so one last question, from a quick one, hopefully, from Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer.
Yeah, hi there. Thank you, Carl. And thank you, Charlotte. That was really very interesting indeed. I think it's a bigger question about what would your advice be now to the university about getting feedback, because the current EVASys system is appalling, I think. It's very one-dimensional. It's at a moment in time, and it doesn't allow this degree of depth of thought and reflection and reflexivity on the point of the students. And I think it doesn't make them sit back and reflect on self. So I suppose the quick question is, if you were to redesign student feedback with your experience now at a much bigger level now, to university level, if you like, what would you do? Would you take this approach? Could we take this this focus group approach? To me, seems far more robust than the current system we're using. So just if you were advising at the top, what would your advice be?
I think face-to-face feedback from students is got to be the way forward. Really, well, not got to be, what could be really, really enhanced going forward, because the students want to feel listened to and they want to feel valued. And I think also with using a focus group or some more interactive form of feedback with the students, they do bounce ideas off each other, and you know, something that one student may not have thought about, another student then comments, but then that sparks more ideas. And I think as a tutor and a lecturer, I then could pinpoint different things that I thought, oh yeah, that would be great to move that into next time, or yeah, that's a really interesting thing that they didn't quite grasp that. And I think just when you're reading something in black and white or tick box yes no, that can be sometimes hard to gauge. And then I think also, although there was mixed feedback during the focus group, but I don't know, I've never used the EVASYS system personally myself very much, only that I've heard of it in our department. I can imagine though, if you get a lot of negative feedback on it when you've put so much effort into a module, it must be a little bit disheartening. So perhaps this is a different way going forward. But it is time consuming for the tutors.
Okay, thanks very much, Charlotte. That was a fantastic talk, and thanks for your questions, guys.